November 17, 1558. Dawn breaks over St. James's Palace in London, and in a darkened chamber, a woman lies dying. But this isn't just any woman. This is Mary Tudor, Queen of England, and in exactly 2 hours, she will be dead. Here's what makes this death different from every other royal death you've ever heard about. The servants keeping vigil don't even notice when she stops breathing. For 5 years, Mary Tudor ruled England with an iron fist and a burning faith. 300 Protestants died in flames because of her orders, earning her a name that would echo through history. Bloody Mary. An entire nation watched as she desperately tried and failed to produce an heir. And now, at just 42 years old, her body has betrayed her in ways that would horrify even the brutal standards of Tudor medicine. But to understand the true horror of her final days, we need to understand something else first. Mary Tudor spent her entire life dying. Not metaphorically, literally, from the age of 14. Her body waged war against itself. And what happened in November 1558 was simply the final battle in a war she'd been losing for decades. Picture this. August 1558, 3 months before her death. Mary sits in her chamber at Richmond Palace, her abdomen so swollen she can barely stand. Her ladies whisper among themselves, "Surely the Queen is finally pregnant." But Mary knows better. She's felt this swelling before, twice actually, and both times there was no baby. Just humiliation, disappointment, and the crushing realization that God himself seemed to be mocking her deepest desire. Dr. Thomas Hick, one of her physicians, examines her that morning. He notes the yellowing of her skin, the way her eyes seem to bulge slightly, how her voice has grown rough and deep, almost masculine. But what he writes in his private journal is even more telling. Her Majesty suffers from her old disease, but worse than ever before. That old disease, those 3 words would define everything about Mary's death, because what was killing her had been there all along, growing, spreading, waiting. Let me paint you the scene of England in 1558, because context matters here. London is dying, not figuratively, literally dying. An influenza epidemic that started in 1557 has killed approximately 8,000 people in the city alone. The harvests of 1555 and 1556 were disasters, the worst in living memory. People are starving, sick and desperate. At court, the atmosphere is even more toxic. Everyone knows Mary is dying, and more importantly, everyone knows who's going to replace her. Elizabeth, the Protestant daughter of Anne Boleyn, the woman Mary has spent her entire life trying not to acknowledge as her sister. Here's where it gets truly cruel. In September 1558, Philip II of Spain, Mary's husband, the man she adores with an almost pathetic desperation, is in Brussels. He's been gone since July 1557, over a year now. Mary writes to him constantly, begging him to return. His response, silence. Complete, devastating silence. Meanwhile, at Hatfield House, 20 miles north of London, Elizabeth Tudor waits. She's been waiting for 5 years, knowing this moment would come. Her servants report that courtiers from Mary's household have started arriving, not officially of course. These are secret visits made under cover of darkness. They're rats fleeing a sinking ship, and Elizabeth is their lifeboat. Back at court, Mary's most trusted advisor, Cardinal Reginald Pole, is also dying. He's been sick since September with what physicians call a quartan fever, likely malaria. The 2 people who've spent 5 years trying to restore Catholicism to England are dying simultaneously, and everyone knows what that means. Their life's work is about to be undone. But let's go back to Mary herself, because her physical deterioration is where this story becomes truly horrifying. Here's what the official court records do tell you about September 1558. Mary could no longer recognize faces. Jane Dormer, her most loyal lady-in-waiting, later wrote about this in her memoirs, documents that weren't discovered until the 17th century. According to Dormer, Mary would call for people who had been dead for years. She asked for her mother, Catherine of Aragon, who'd been dead since 1536. She called for her former governess, Margaret Pole, who'd been executed by her own father in 1541. But the most heartbreaking detail, Mary kept asking for her husband Philip, and her ladies had to keep lying to her, telling her he was on his way. They couldn't bear to tell their dying queen that Philip had already written her off, literally. In his letters to his sister Joanna, discovered in the Spanish archives centuries later, Philip referred to Mary in the past tense while she was still alive. To understand the medical horror of Mary's final months, we need to talk about what had been happening to her body for decades. Since she was 14 years old, Mary suffered from what court physicians called her usual troubles. Today, medical historians believe she had severe endometriosis, a condition where tissue similar to the uterine lining grows outside the uterus. Every month, Mary experienced bleeding so heavy she'd be bedridden for days, pain so severe she'd vomit and lose consciousness. Her physicians tried everything, bloodletting from her feet, purgatives that left her dehydrated, tooth extractions because they believed dental problems caused her headaches. Each treatment made her weaker. But by 1554, something else was happening in Mary's body. Her pituitary gland, that tiny pea-sized organ at the base of the brain, had likely developed a tumor, not cancerous, but devastating nonetheless. This tumor was flooding her system with hormones that convinced her body it was pregnant when it wasn't. Think about the cruelty of this for a moment. Mary desperately needed an heir to secure Catholic England. Her body responded by mimicking pregnancy twice, complete with swollen belly, breast milk production, even the sensation of a baby kicking. But there was never a baby, just a tumor pressing against her brain, slowly destroying her from the inside. If you're captivated by these dark corners of history, by the human stories behind the crowns and the suffering behind the power, please subscribe. These stories matter. They remind us that even queens were mortal, even monarchs knew fear and pain and the bitter taste of dreams that would never come true. Join us as we continue to uncover the stories history tried to forget. By spring 1558, new symptoms appeared. Her abdomen swelled again, but this time it was different. The swelling was harder, more painful. Fluid accumulated in her belly, a condition called a Modern oncologists who have studied the historical records believe this points to one thing: reproductive cancer, likely ovarian, possibly with liver metastasis. Let me describe what this meant in practical terms. Every movement sent waves of pain through her abdomen. The fluid buildup pressed against her lungs, making breathing difficult. Her liver, struggling to function, couldn't process toxins properly, leading to confusion and hallucinations. The yellowing of her skin, jaundice, made her appearance shocking even to those used to royal illness. October 1558. Mary has been moved to St. James's Palace, chosen because it's smaller, easier to heat, more comfortable for a dying queen. But comfort is relative when your entire household is disappearing. Here's a detail that doesn't make it into most history books. By late October, Mary's household had shrunk from over 400 members to less than 50. Where did everyone go? Hatfield. They were all at Hatfield, bowing before Elizabeth, pledging their loyalty to the future queen while their current queen lay dying. Susan Clarenceau, Mary's trusted lady of the bedchamber for 20 years, left on October 25th. She told Mary she needed to visit her sick mother. She went straight to Elizabeth. Thomas Cornwallis, Mary's controller, disappeared on November 1st without even making an excuse. Even Dr. Thomas Hick, her physician, started making trips to Hatfield, though at least he had the decency to return to tend to Mary. November 10th, 1558. 1 week before Mary's death, Dr. Hick performs what will be his final examination of the Queen. His notes, preserved in the Royal College of Physicians, describe symptoms that would terrify any modern doctor. Complete loss of vision in both eyes. Mary is now functionally blind. The tumor, whether pituitary or metastatic, has likely pressed against her optic nerves. She exists in total darkness, unable to see the faces of the few servants who remain. Her fever spikes to dangerous levels, then drops so low her extremities turn blue. This cyclical pattern suggests her body's systems are failing one by one. But here's the truly disturbing part. Mary is still conscious, still aware, still capable of feeling every moment of agony. Tudor medicine has no morphine, no proper pain relief. The best they can offer is wine mixed with herbs that do almost nothing. November 13th, 4 days before death. Jane Dormer sits beside Mary's bed, holding her hand. Mary's eyes, though sightless, suddenly focus on something invisible to everyone else. She smiles, the first time anyone has seen her smile in weeks. "Do you see them?" Mary whispers. Jane asks what Her Majesty sees. "The children," Mary replies. "Little children, like angels, playing and singing." This wasn't just delirium, or at least not just delirium. Mary's description was specific, detailed. She described their clothing, their songs, even their games. Who twice believed she was pregnant only to be cruelly disappointed. Depending on how you interpret them. A smile spreads across her face, the kind of peaceful smile none of them have seen since before her illness began. And then nothing. No dramatic last words, no death rattle, no final struggle. Mary simply stops breathing. The change is so subtle that for several minutes nobody realizes what's happened. It's only when Dr. Hick checks for a pulse that the truth becomes clear. Mary Tudor, Queen of England, is dead. Within hours, Sir Nicholas Throckmorton rides hard for Hatfield with Mary's coronation ring, still warm from her dead finger. At Lambeth Palace, Cardinal Pole dies just 12 hours after Mary, the two architects of Catholic England's restoration, dead on the same day. And at Hatfield House, Elizabeth kneels under an oak tree and quotes scripture in Latin. "This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes." The performance is perfect. Within days, Protestant England will rise again, and Mary's dream of a Catholic kingdom will die with her. Her body will lie in state for a month, visited by thousands, before being buried in Westminster Abbey. But here is the final cruelty. She would not be buried with her mother as she wished. She would eventually share a tomb with Elizabeth, the sister who undid everything she fought for. Even in death, Mary Tudor could not escape the irony of her life.